Hey guys, how's it going and welcome back. So it's review time on my Jackson JS32, what do you call this thing, a DKA LH. So LH is left-handed. They also have this exact same guitar, same color in right-handed. And they only did the blue in the lefty, but they have 4 different colors all together. And this is one of their new guitars. Anyways, so a little bit about this. I printed out the specs. We've got a compound radius fretboard that's 12 inch to 16 inch. So it starts out really rounded here and flattens out toward the heel. Interesting. Makes for some really awesome bending capabilities. I mean, I'm just amazed at how well this thing can bend strings. It's just freaky. Anyways, 24 jumbo frets, shark fin inlays. What else have we got here? Jackson high output humbucking pickups with ceramic magnets. Very, very clean pickups. And very dirty as well at the same time. So it can go either way. But they're definitely not muddy pickups in the sense where they're gross or dull sounding kind of mud. They're crisp and clean and brightish, and you know, they're just amazing sounding pickups. Quite impressed with them, and it's their pickups, and you know, kind of like Cort does their power sound pickups, which are amazing pickups. Of course, I swapped my Cort guitar over to a different type of pickup that I kind of like a lot better, but still, the power sound pickups from Cort are quite amazing pickups. Maybe one day I'll throw them back in, or maybe not. Kind of like the zebra look myself, and the different kind of sound. Now it does have an arch top on this one too. Solid body though, it's not hollow. It's definitely solid, but they've made it as an arch top. So you've got a lot of nice contouring shape into the body, so it's a very comfortable guitar to have around your neck and against your body. It's very comfortable feeling, okay? It's not blocky or chunky. Also not extremely heavy, but not really a light guitar at the same time. But definitely not extremely heavy. It's nowhere near the weight of a Les Paul, which is kind of good because they're hard on the neck. Anyways, it's got the Jackson branded Floyd Rose double locking tremolo system, standard strap buttons, die-cast tuners, all black hardware, and of course they call this a bright blue, which is actually one of my favorite blues. The first thing that attracted me to this guitar when I saw it on the wall, because it stood out against all the others on there, and they got almost like, what, over 100 or more guitars on the wall, and I'm like, ooh, I gotta go check this out. And so I went to check it out, and I looked at it, and I saw Floyd, and I'm like, oh, no way, I really hate Floyd's. And I'm beginning to start to like this one. It's not so bad. My last experience with a Floyd was back in 1985-86 when I bought my Yamaha RGX, and that's when Floyd's first came out too, at least as far as what I knew. But we didn't have YouTube back then, and we didn't have a lot of people with a lot of knowledge about setting these things up. And it was very frustrating, and I gave up on that guitar rather quickly because it just drove me mental. I probably should have waited until I've gone through another 50 or 60 guitars and learned more about setting guitars up, and then I probably would have been a lot more comfortable. But at the time, I was only been a guitar player for a couple of years at the time. Not a boatload of experience even doing setups at that point of my own, so it's kind of like wasn't really ready to get into a Floyd. And I really didn't understand the concept behind them at the time either. So it was kind of one of those things. So if you're looking at getting a guitar with a Floyd, educate yourself first. Now I do have a video on my channel, and there's many of them out there, showing you guys how to change strings on this thing, how to block the bridge when you do it, basic setup of it, that sort of thing, right? Okay. So if you want to check that video out, it's going to give you a lot of information that'll also save you a lot of grief. Alright, because these things can be a little fussy to set up. Now, if you're just new to Floyd's and you're going to change your own strings because you think you're hot stuff and you can do this because you've done it on all your other guitars, do it one string at a time. I just took them all off and did it in one shot because I'd already blocked the bridge. And then I just had a little bit of extra setup that I went through on, you know, jamming some cardboard and folding some paper to get that bridge sitting level, okay? Now the bridge still doesn't sit completely level, because by the time you get the string tension on there, you know, it does pull up just a little bit, and that's fine. It's not a big deal. I did tighten the screws in about another turn a piece, and just had a little bit of extra pressure, so I did actually drop the angle down just a bit. And I still got a little bit more tweaking I want to do to this thing to just get it exactly the way I want it set up, right? Because it's all about how we want our guitars to be set up, how they're going to be done. But we also have to keep in mind we have limits within that guitar of what it can and can't do. From the factory, this thing has an extremely low action, which is nice, and no buzzing whatsoever. Fretwork is beautiful on this thing. Does have binding throughout the entire neck and the headstock area here, and wraps right around. And so you're not having to worry too much about the whole fret sprout thing. Not that it can't happen, but with fret binding on there, it does really make a difference in a well smoothed out fret job. So this is extremely smooth. There's like no rough edges, nothing. You can give this thing the death grip and nothing's gonna bite you, okay? Fretwork's done very well. And I've seen guitars without binding set up just as well. The jumbo frets are great, which means very little pressure is actually needed, so it makes for a very fast playing neck. And it is kind of a thin neck too. It's got a little bit of width to it, a little bit wider than some of my other guitars, but it's also very thin from the front to the back. And the fretboard is nice. They call this an amaranth, I guess, fretboard. So it's not rosewood, or, you know, it's a different kind of wood. I have absolutely no experience with this kind of wood, so I really got to look into it a little bit more. But it is a beautiful wood, though, nonetheless. And it does have kind of a rosy wood look to it, to a certain point anyways. The 24 frets is great, so you've got a full 2 octaves to play with. 3-way pickup selector. Your whammy bar, of course, or tremolo bar. You just unscrew the collar like so, pop it right out and pop it right back in, and it's got a nylon collar inside so that it makes it for very smooth, so you can actually just have this bar sit wherever you want. It's going to kind of stay there, which is nice. So a lot better setup than, you know, Strats are. No offense, I have 2 Strats, so I can say what I want about them. But anyhow, the tuning stability on this, once you have it set up, is great. When you initially change the strings, like I ended up having to, because I broke my high E from the factory, and that was just trying to retune and reset this thing up so I could have playroom. The big thing is you need a lot of playroom with these screws for going in and out for your tuning, right? So an initial setup, which I go through all that in the video, you've got to do some adjusting. Now, I did one tweak last night because we played at church, which is another reason why the review is happening now. We went through, what, about 15 songs, 20 songs, and I only had to retune this thing once. When I first got into the church, I had to tune like one or 2 strings, just a little tweak, and then during all the playing we did, I only had to retune a couple of strings once, but I had to reset up in here on the E and B. I had to reset these 2 dials, but the other ones were able to be left alone, and I still have plenty of tuning range left in them. But within the next couple of days, I'm going to have to re-back them off, retune, and reset. Now, as far as the bad points to this guitar goes, I mean, there's so many good points, it's amazing. But the only real downside I found to this thing, the way they've arched the headstock on this down angle, okay, your high E string doesn't perfectly sit in the slot without the screw and locking cap being there. It can actually lift up, and it's just a weird angle. But it's only the E string that seems to do it. The B and all your other strings sit beautiful on this thing. It's just this high E with this arched angle. The string just comes to the edge of the curve. Okay, it doesn't go over the curve, but comes just to the edge of the curve. And they've also put a bit of a back rake on this, not a very steep one, but just enough to pull the strings over the nut. But it doesn't seem to pull the high E as much as it does the others. So when you are setting this thing up for tuning, you're going to have to make sure, either way, all of these have to be down and on and just a little bit loose enough for the string to slip. But especially on that high E, it's going to be required to have that down a little bit further than the others to keep it in place enough, because what happens here is you're going to tune your guitar here first. But before you tune it here, you've got to unloosen all of these screws, okay, till they come straight up, and then turn them down probably about 2 or 3 turns each to allow for some movement up and down on the tuning area. And then you've got to make sure that you tune this thing just below center. Okay, so a tuner, once it hits the center, you're in pitch, right? So you have to tune it just below center on your E and B string, right? Because that's going to put more pressure down to lock it, so it brings your pitch up. So you have to have a little bit of playroom to push it back down again. But as you stretch the strings from playing, of course, you're going to have to dial downwards for retuning. But before you do any of that, you still got to pull and tune and pull and tune and pull and tune and pull and tune and pull and tune to stretch those strings out. So I go through all that in the video. But that's the only downside is just this E. And that's, you don't want to have to loosen off this screw for your E and B string too many times, because it can cut into the string and cause the string to snap, right? So that's about the only downside I see on the design. Okay. Otherwise, the guitar is fantastic. It stays in tune well. I'm not a light player by any means, and this thing does a really great job. Now, I am light on the fretting hand, though, because, we are dealing with jumbo frets, and I've learned to deal with medium, jumbo, and jumbo frets where you barely need any pressure to ring out those notes. When I am string bending, though, I tend to be a little aggressive with bending, and I am, at times, a pretty aggressive strummer. Mind you, I do use either a .46 or a .53 millimeter pick. I found with this guitar that the .46 millimeter picks actually work out the best. And this thing also comes stock with 942s for the string gauge, and I would not suggest going any higher in gauge unless you're prepared for a completely new setup, which means you best be taking it to a guy who knows what he's doing with Floyd's, because when you do change your string gauge up or down, it means a whole new setup. It means your intonation also has to be adjusted for those gauge of strings. So I'm sticking with 942s because the factory set the intonation up on this extremely well, and I like the 942s on some of my guitars. The only thing I actually like running 10s on are my Les Pauls, because they keep their tune the best and they sound the best, and I can still bend the crap out of the strings without a big deal, and so I use 10s on my Les Pauls. All my other guitars are running 942 or 946 depending on the guitar. Of course, acoustics are different than my electrics, but you get the idea. But yeah, so overall, for the whole night of playing and only having, that one main retweak and the first tweak of just the tuning itself down here, before we started practice, that was really good for all those songs. So I was really, really super impressed, and it was still in tune when we were done the songs for the night. I was like, wow, that's impressive. I never had a good experience with a Floyd until now. But they can be a bit of a love-hate relationship until you get used to them. So just, kind of keep that in mind, right? But recommendations on the guitar. Well, for a $400 guitar in Canada, or $300 in the States, about what they sell for, it's worth every penny. And the finish on this, there's no flaws anywhere on this guitar as far as the fit and finish goes. I don't think I would call this a flaw. I'd call it a design thing that maybe they might want to look at. But as far as, finish flaws go, none the thing is just beautiful. Pickups are great. The heights are just right where they should be. The sound is amazing, whether you're playing dirty stuff or clean stuff. Last night I played mostly clean, except for the one song we did. I think it was the last song or the second last song. Anyways, he wanted me to put a bit of dirt into it, so I did. And and lower the volume just a bit, just as an accent. And it worked out great. Even adding a little bit of extra bass to that dirt, it still kept it very clean sounding, which was good. I do have a demo of this video, which is why we're not playing in this video today. So check out my demo on this guitar, and you'll get a rough idea of what it sounds like with a few different effects going through it. But I can definitely see this thing being a keeper. I have no qualms about that. And of course, we also have YouTube too, so if I really need some help, I get stuck on something on this, at least we have YouTube nowadays. We didn't back in the early 80s, so yeah, there's a difference there. But I don't recommend this guitar for the beginner guitar player. So not as a first guitar. Maybe your third or fourth, but definitely not as your first. Now this thing does come with tools. It does come with a setup manual to tell you how to set the guitar up for the most part. And I did a little modification already on mine at the headstock, and I had this foam with sticky on one side, and I drilled a smaller hole obviously through it than what the Allen key is. But this way I can keep this Allen key on the guitar at all times, and nobody actually sees it when I'm playing on stage that it's there. And I don't have to look at it either, other than when I'm playing. But this particular key in the set that comes with it is for these screws, as well as the backs for changing strings. So for some reason I have to change a string, I can do that while I'm on the go, right? So because I don't have a hard shell case for this, and I share a gig bag between this and several other guitars, so it's kind of like, well, I always need the key handy anyways at home, so why not just keep this key on the headstock, and then my other keys can actually sit in the package and safely in the closet, and those other keys are just for setting the intonation with and setting the neck, and the neck is perfectly set up on this thing. It's about as dead straight gets, and as far as any kind of movability, well, even a business card won't fit in there. It's low, yet it does not buzz anywhere, so I'm quite happy with that. So that's awesome. So great guitar. So where do we put this puppy? Well, I say 4.5 out of 5 works for me just dandy. And as far as I'm concerned, it's worth every penny too. And the Floyd isn't too bad. It's not a perfect system, at first, but it's not too bad. It works well, stays in tune good, so I'm happy with that. And I think I'm going to really enjoy this guitar. It may be the one that forces my Cort into retirement on the shelf. No, I'm just kidding. I'm still going to play my Cort once in a while. But this is definitely one of my new favorites in the collection. So there you go. So that's the Jackson JS32 DKA LH for left-handed. And if you want a right-handed model, they carry it in 4 different colors, one of which is this one. So check them out. Check out Jackson Guitar's website too, your local dealer, blah, blah, blah. I got mine from Long McQuaid in Canada, so do check them because they're a Jackson dealer, and they do have a few Jacksons in stock. So this is one that I saw that I couldn't say no. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll definitely catch you guys on the next one. See ya.